how to edit a picture in Lightroom from this to this. Let's wait a little bit. Yes, to this. So first of all, there are two different things in Lightroom you can do. The one thing is to apply filters, as you can see here, and you probably will see it because my the click thing is very big. So as you can see here, I can change the look of the picture very easily within seconds, basically, to different looks I have pre-installed on Lightroom. These filters, you could say, because everybody knows them nowadays as filters, but before they were called presets in Lightroom, or color grades when it comes to, or LUTs when it comes to video editing. So first of all, there are two different things. The one thing is the look of the picture, and the other thing is the editing of the picture. So basically retouching the picture. So now let's go back to the original image and let's actually try. So this is already the edited version, where I cleared up the skin and I sharpened a little bit around the eyes and things like this. So in Lightroom, you have basically the original file. The original file now has a corresponding file that is actually displayed in Lightroom, because that's not the original file. If you zoom in, Lightroom actually does something called, it actually looks into the original picture a little bit more and things like these. So now the first thing we do is to create a virtual copy. That's useful because then you have different pictures in Lightroom. As you can see, I have different pictures of the same picture in Lightroom. If you do everything on the same picture, then you have only one copy in Lightroom. A virtual copy is basically a copy, but it's not really a hardware copy, but it's just a virtual copy. So let's now create a virtual copy. The next thing we do, and that's already one of the first steps, we go into developing, and I'm already in developing mode. Library mode is where you can see all the pictures. Developing mode is where you can actually edit the picture. And now let's go into these things here. These things are the important things, because here, these are actually your brushes, you could say. So first of all, let's get into, I have a brush called Soften Skins. These are all presets. Lightroom also has presets. These presets in Lightroom you can see up here. And then you can also add manually presets into here. You can find them on the internet. Sometimes people like me link them on the internet, and then you can actually, or you can just copy paste them from a video like this. So just look into the settings someone has and then just copy them. So basically this setting allows me, so as you can see, so the ring around this here, the ring around the other ring I have, is basically a softening up. So this means the filter doesn't apply all its strength in the bigger circle, but only in the small circle, and the bigger circle is kind of just there to smoothen the transition to the sharp image. So therefore, with skin, the problem is that with skin we want to do two things, and Soften Skin is not really the first thing, because the first thing actually is zooming into the image a little bit more, and you can't do it with this on, because if you now zoom, as you might also hear because of the mouse, you actually just enlarge or make the circle smaller again. So the thing you actually need to do is go into these different settings, for example 200%, and let's actually get a few of these things out. The important thing here is if somebody has something that is not really, that is basically not only temporary there, but it's permanent. So you don't want to edit if somebody has something very big, that I don't want to say it's almost part of the personality, but yeah, you don't want to edit things out. So for example, this here is something I wouldn't necessarily edit out because it's kind of always there. So therefore, if you see the picture if you see the person on video, then this means that, well, this will also be there. Whereas these other things are only temporary. So it means you shouldn't edit a face unrecognizable, kind of. That's of course a little bit too extremely said, but you want to only edit the things out, stamp the things out, which are only temporary there. So, as you can also maybe already see here, we have a reference point. That's basically where the skin texture is taken from, and then we have the point where it is then copied onto. And we can control different things in here. We can control the size of the points, as you can see here, but the bigger the size, the less detailed it probably gets, because it's just comparing these two different things and taking basically the skin detail out of there and copying onto there. And then you have the feather and the opacity. The opacity is now 100%, which means if you, for example, let's just enlarge this very much to show you how it actually works. So if I want to copy paste another eye onto me, which is something you can actually do, then the opacity is now 68%. If we turn up the opacity to 100%, then the eye fully appears and it is fully copy-pasted onto the lower third of my face. But now if the opacity goes back to 0, then it's not apparent at all. So basically how much of this image is pasted onto the other thing. So the circle size is the circle size, and the feather is now the thing around the bigger circle. So the bigger the feather, so we actually cannot see it right now because it's so small. So let's actually increase the size again, and not too big. Feather. It's called a feather. The feather. Okay, the circle size is still too big, and Lightroom doesn't respond right now, which is very nice because I'm recording a video. Hello Lightroom. I'll maybe stop recording and I will join again once Lightroom responds. So seemingly Lightroom has finally answered my prayers and it responds again. So we wanted to see the feather. So now let's make it big again and see the feather. And now we don't have two circles, which is kind of strange, because then I don't know what the feather is for. So then we just go on into editing this picture. So what we need to do now is to stamp out the rest of these things. We can actually delete it by just pressing delete. And now let's zoom in again to 200%. That's probably something we can work with. And then let's stamp out these other things. The problem is, if you have all these pictures and then you want to actually appear on video on the internet, then the problem is that you will have things like these, and therefore you create an unrealistic image of yourself, which is something many probably already heard about. So therefore I think these days there might be, of course, if you edit for a magazine or things like these, I mean, these people still edit all of these pictures. Also Kim Kardashian probably also edits all of the pictures. But the thing is, if you actually just post the real thing, then, yeah, well, if you then appear finally on video or in public, then people won't be disappointed by how you look. So this is another idea. So I didn't do too much. Maybe we could do a little bit more because I actually showed you this other thing before. This thing, how it will look like. Yeah, let's just leave it like this. We also don't want to make this video too long. So the next step now is to soften the skin after we have basically removed the big dimples. Not really the big dimples, but all of these things. And as I already explained, you can now, you don't really see the softening. Maybe that's due to something I haven't checked yet. But, well, where is the softening? Hello. So now it finally works. The thing is that my preset seems to be edited somehow. So you first mark basically the area, and then the next thing is you take either the sharpness down, which you can see, it gets blurry. Now it gets sharper, blurry, sharper, blurry. And the other thing you take down is the texture or the clarity. Not the texture, but the clarity. The clarity is actually a very strange tool because there was a phase on YouTube where all of these pictures look like this, with clarity up to the max, and this looks very not nice. And also, but it just, compared to a normal picture, of course it looks more dramatic often, especially on faces that should not look that good, like on horror movies, for example. But let's get back to the picture. So let's reduce the clarity a little bit around this, and also the sharpness maybe a little bit. Where is the sharpness? Here. Let's drag it maybe a little bit down, and then soften the whole thing. Alright. You already see there is not that big of a difference. The difference can be done. So now what I did is I hit the eyebrow and I just press Ctrl-C to undo the last brush stroke. It's not a brush stroke, but much more a brush stroke. So now I have marked all the area, and now I can also see what area is marked, usually by hovering over. No. Oh yeah, it does work. Very nice. So now we can see what area we have marked. What you usually want to leave out is the lips, the eyes, the eyebrows, and maybe also the nose, depends. And what often also is very nice if it's brushed up a little bit is the skin on your neck. So now let's take the sharpness, not the sharpness, but the clarity, and drag it down a little bit. Yes, that looks all right. And also again, I think it doesn't really look good that we have these things, these blemishes or whatever they are called in here. But you also see that Lightroom responds not very well to me. That's probably because, I don't know. Lightroom was always slow for me, even 10 years ago, and it still is, even though I don't have the oldest notebook of the world, it still is very slow. So the next step now is to sharpen the eyes. Basically, we can distinguish between 3 different phases. The first is the stamping phase. This is what we are currently doing or have been doing. Then the next thing is to soften certain parts of the image, as I showed you. And the next thing now is to sharpen up certain parts of the image. For the sharpening up part, it would make sense to go even into more detail. And you can also use the normal zoom if you let go of the brush. And then you can also basically scroll into the picture. And if you press Control, I think, you can actually zoom in. Then you can actually see the pixels, even in a raw picture. So now, for the eyes and the eyebrows, there are 2 things you want to do. The first is to sharpen up the eyelids, and then to sharpen up the eyebrows maybe a little bit, but and then I can also show you what overdone eye sharpening looks like. So first of all, we go into my presets again, and instead of, basically you can take the same preset and maybe you can adjust all these things a little bit. You can also just take the Lightroom presets that are already there, but I have special presets. For example, eyes sharpen. I don't actually know if I have a different presets for eyelids. These are also not the eyelids, but I currently don't know what they're called. So therefore we go in here. We now just go over them. It's very important to not. Also, don't overdo it as a male person, because well, then it looks too female. So if we amp up the clarity, for example, you can see that it looks as if I had, what is it called? Eyeshadow? It's not called eyeshadow. I actually don't know the makeup words in English. Nevertheless, let's continue. So it doesn't really make sense for me. I tried it in the past too. So what many people do, and so first of all, let's sharpen up the pupils. This is something you can do to the same clarity, I would say. Sharpening up the pupils or increasing the clarity makes them a little bit darker. And this is also something you can use if you have already brown eyes, and then you can basically sharpen it up to the max. Let's actually see what it looks like normal, and then it looks completely different to before. It looks like almost a puppet, you could say. And now let's go in again. And now the thing many people do, and this is something that looks very drastic, but also is very, well, it's very manipulating, you could say, but at the same time, it can be done wrong very easily. And since I do not have a preset, let's just take a normal preset. I just take the eye sharpening, and let's just increase the exposure. And as you can already see, this is, so the left thing is what then a sharpened up eye looks like. So let's actually do it down a little bit. Of course, this is now also increased. The exposure here is also increased, but let's just do it this way and see what this eye actually looks like. And you can already see that the eyes pop out of the image because they are just brighter than the rest of the image, and the white is actually brighter. It's the same with teeth whitening. The brighter things are, the more they pop out of an image that is otherwise normally exposed. And this is what many people do when they brighten up their eye whites, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I tried it in the past, but also it has to be very, very good, because often if you just sharpen them or if you just increase the clarity, let's actually zoom in again. The problem is that many people don't have just white eyes, but you actually have blood vessels in there, and these then also kind of pop, and you then have to edit them out and do different things and maybe copy stamp. So that gets very complicated, and this is not something we want to do because we want to keep things simple. So now the next thing we want to do is to sharpen up first of all, decrease the clarity on these again. So you find the point where you actually had all the marked area, which we can see now. And we also have marked area here, which probably doesn't really make sense. But at the same time, I'll just leave it in right now. So we actually can click on it and then edit it again. But you cannot edit it unless you click on it again. So the clarity now is up to 100. Let's actually go down, and we just want to increase the clarity a little bit to maybe remove the picture just a little bit more from reality than it already is. So now the next step is to sharpen the eyes. Not the eyes, but the eyebrows. And I now will use a different one, because otherwise I have everything in the same filter, and then you cannot edit these things independently because it's all connected to the same filter. So now, as you can already see, they got a little bit darker because they are sharpened up, and not really sharpened, but with increased clarity. That's the thing I wanted to say. So now we have increased the sharpness and the clarity of the eyebrows. The next step is now, so the final steps are now to increase the clarity in hair, which is also something you can do and also something that looks very nice. So let's go to, I actually have a different preset for hair sharpening. These are all just sharpening presets that don't do much apart from having different sizes, feathers, flow, and maybe densities. But let's just sharpen up the hair and let's just see what happens if we increase the clarity to 100% again to just see the effect. And I don't have completely dark hair. It's rather dark blonde, and that's actually me, by the way. In terms of copyright, this is very nice because then I don't have to worry about copyright. So let's actually just increase the clarity to infinity. Oh, I just used the same one as... So as you can see, it got a lot darker. It looks quite sharp. We actually could do one where it's completely overdone, where everything in the picture is completely overdone. But I would not recommend completely overdoing it. So it is connected now to the eyebrow filter somehow. I don't know why, but let's actually see. Check it out. By hovering over it. Yeah, well, it's we are now in the other one again. So let's go back into the... So you actually have to click on it, but if you now click on it and you have a filter on, you create a different mask entirely. So we go back to the hair sharpening, and now now the other one flipped off because it reset the normal skin to the hair sharpening because I had it marked. So let's do this one down again. It's basically just playing around with sharpness and clarity in a picture, and let's just leave it like this. So now, what are the final steps? The final steps you can take is, first of all, to press exit, and then you have nothing marked, and then you can change your pencil or whatever this is again, and let's just see if we have a preset for... No, I don't. Therefore, I just take the eyebrows. Maybe just take the eye sharpening preset, and let's now... So it would make sense to have different presets for all of these different ones. Let's actually go to 100% and let's increase the clarity of the claws. Because as you can already a little bit see, if you have a very detailed... So let's increase it again to 100% just to see the effect. It looks different. This is with decreased clarity, this is with increased clarity. And this is how many people edit the hell out of their pictures. So now, the next step now is to, again, create another virtual copy. That's the usual workflow I do. And because now you can actually apply all of these different filters. If you go onto the internet, many creative people actually release filters free. So there is, for example, the kind of famous teal and orange Sam Colder preset, which I also have, and I have different presets downloaded and I can access them. I also have a few presets which I did myself. For example, let's go through them. Wonder House. This is what Wonder House looks like. Wonder Bright. Victual Advert. Of course, this is completely overexposed. It depends on the picture. If a picture is kind of dark and moody, this can really bring out different things. Also, we can just take one of these presets. These are basically just presettings, and they apply to all the different colors, the color settings, the hue. So you have a lot of different things in Lightroom you actually can do. You can, for example, change one color to another color, but these are not things we want to discuss right now. Let's just use the presets because I don't want to talk for 3 hours for this picture. We just take the virtual advert preset I created, and then we just take the exposure down, and actually it will look completely differently. Now I have something, so I actually have still this marked, so let's press escape, and now it's not marked anymore. And if I now take the exposure down, it should take the exposure down of all of the picture, at least theoretically. So the problem was that I was still in this pencil tool, and we actually don't want to use this pencil tool anymore because we want to use the main tool. So this is still the same thing, and if we decrease it, it looks like it looks even more moody, and then we increase the brightness and it looks completely different. That's just what one of these filters or presets can do for you. These actually have a different, so many of these are actually just the digital versions of false color representations in the past. Because if you developed a picture in the past, sometimes if you had the wrong material to develop these pictures on, actually it turned completely blue, and this is what kind of turned into art, and now you can access it by doing these different things. True colors, for example, here we have a little bit of vignette. It doesn't sound really good. It looks really good, I think, on this picture. Submarine has again increased clarity. You can increase the overall clarity, and then it kind of overrides the clarity we did on the picture, or the removal of clarity we did on the picture. And well, these are all just different looks, and this is how you very easily can create different looks. This one is the one I showed you before. It's also one I created myself. Rough Oslo, for example, is one I created for a picture of Oslo, and then I just called it Oslo. And this is how you can very easily then change the look of the picture. Sometimes the overexposure is actually all of the times the overexposure is intentional, and this also means that not every preset is applicable to every other filter. Not to every other filter, but to every other picture. So this is also something I quite like, and you can, for example, take the tint here. This is basically how green or how red a picture is, and to remove some of the shadowy green, for example, or remove the temperature, or move the temperature up to the warmer tones or to the colder tones, and you get completely different looks. And these are the ones I created for myself. I also have different ones I created for stock images, sleeker images, and I also have an Instagram collection, and I will show you the Instagram collection now. So this is kind of reminiscent of the old Instagram filters, Black Mamba, for example. This means you can create the Instagram effect filters, or the effect of an Instagram filter, before in Lightroom, and you don't have to use your mobile app, but you can actually post it directly through Creator Studio, for example, if you want to post something to Instagram. So these are just all different filters, and I think that's kind of the end of the video. Maybe I just show you the few filters I had from this one other thing, where I had the Sam Colder filter. This is kind of a classic Sam Colder look. It's a little bit too orange. It's from somebody else who recreated it in Lightroom, and then I adapted it a little bit, so you can see there's a little bit of a difference. That's the difference. And there is still a little bit too much orange for my taste in there. Now it didn't change because Lightroom is very slow, as I said again. And this is kind of a Sam Colder look you can create very easily. And that's, I think, the end of the picture. That's how you go from the original picture. Let's just show it again. Whenever it loads, Lightroom, whenever you are ready, to another picture with edited, retouched face and close, and also maybe a filter or preset.